Welcome to Madame Raven's. This way to the library. She's been expecting you.
Silver City Sanatorium by C J Cannatelli. Back in the beginning of 2009, I was one of 4 high school students who broke into what was once Undercliff Sanatorium in Meriden, Connecticut. This was, of course, the initiation into the elite group of outcasts in my high school. Basically, freshmen would go with a few seniors who would show them how to get in. The truth is, the cops do watch Undercliff, but not really. Twice a night, someone from the local police department drives around the building and back. The rules were simple. The freshmen had to be the first to go in, and they had to be the last to leave. There were plenty of noises going on throughout the building at all times, but most of which I would attribute to pipes that hadn't been active in decades. As I write this, I'm watching several urban exploration videos of the sanatorium. I'm unimpressed. At least, I always am, until the end of the videos. One of the 4 students, including myself, only Jenny and Molly actually saw what happened. I wasn't with them. I was with another senior. Let's go right ahead and call him Tom. I had the biggest crush on Tom. At least I thought I did. He ended up being a complete coward, which I find incredibly unattractive. We had 2 flashlights between the 4 of us. As any Scooby-Doo mystery gang would do, we split into 2 groups. A senior paired with each of us 2 freshmen. The other freshman left with the senior girl, Molly. They went towards the south side of the building, while Tom and I went north. It's a custom to go into Undercliff as a freshman. It's a rite of passage, so to speak. When you cut your hand on a rusty piece of metal or some broken glass, you go right up the road to the hospital for your traditional tetanus shot. Honestly, with the seniors in my school, everyone who went on this pilgrimage ended up getting a tetanus shot. I guess some girl got really sick a few years before, and now they make everyone do it. Responsibility to the responsible, or so they say. So, Tom and I went through 2 hallways. We actually found a wheelchair that was missing a wheel. If we weren't using 2009 cell phones, we probably would have taken videos the way urban explorers do on YouTube today. I honestly wish I'd been born later on. I would have had footage of this horrible noise. We went into a room that had a gurney on it. No, there wasn't a body or anything, just a whole lot of filth. This abandoned asylum was entirely not up to any form of legal building code, which probably explains why we were warned not to go in. Personally, what terrifies me the most was the way the walls would creak as you walk through this museum of someone else's nightmare. And you should remember that. Undercliff Sanatorium is nothing but the remnants of a time passed by that nobody wants to remember. But we do remember. Meriden will always be haunted by the things that went on there. According to Damned Connecticut, a website for all things effed up, a website for all the effed up things in my home state, Undercliff was originally a hospital to treat children suffering from tuberculosis. These children, tortured both by their affliction and their situation, either lived with horrendous trauma or died, leaving their souls to wait within the walls of the sanatorium. After that, Undercliff housed mental patients. This is all verifiable information. And you can go right ahead and look it up. These patients were exposed to dreadful living conditions. There are even rumors of torture. We didn't actually make it far into the building before we heard this thunderous rumbling coming from down the hall. Tom and I exchanged terrified glances, and I felt my heart creep into my throat and make a new home there. Tom bolted out of the door, and apparently the other kids heard it too, because they came running from the other side of the facility. I ran after everyone and ended up falling, cutting my knee on some shattered glass that rested upon the concrete floor. I earned my tetanus shot that night, and so did Jenny, the other freshman. Years passed, and I talked to Jenny once more after we graduated. We went to the same college for a time before she moved to Canada, and I finally got to discuss that night with someone who had been there. "You know what that noise was, don't you?" she asked, dragging her pen absent-mindedly across the wooden desk. "There was an old woman in a wheelchair. She rolled down the stairs to the basement. I don't think she was alive to begin with. The woman was, in fact, not alive, or at least I hope she wasn't, when she tumbled down those stairs to what had surely been her death. To this day, I hear that same noise when I watch certain videos floating around the internet of stupid kids trying to give themselves a scare. It appears this is a common occurrence, but nobody seems to identify it as the poor woman in the wheelchair reliving her final moments." The Melonhead Monsters of Meriden. Also by C J Cannatelli. This story is actually really hard for me to write down. No words transcribed on paper or expletive-laced explanations can adequately describe the unmitigated and inscrutable terror of the night we went to Red Bridge Trail. This tale is true. I swear with all my heart and soul that this is exactly what happened to myself and my friend on that cursed Sunday evening. My friend Connor is probably the most laid-back guy you will ever meet. We've known each other since middle school. Ever since that night in the summer of 2017, we have found that we really don't have much to say to each other at all anymore. Every Sunday evening, Connor and I would go down to Red Bridge for a blunt walk. Before that summer, I would typically go on these weed-riddled walks myself. Red Bridge is a hiking trail that goes through several towns in Connecticut, to the best of my knowledge. It's this weird, off-the-beaten-path hiking trail a few blocks down from the high school. We call it Red Bridge because you have to park your car at this dinky excuse for a gravel parking lot. To get to the trail, you walk across a short red bridge. I would go here sometimes to get ideas to write. Of course, the trail closes at dark, but the paved tar path goes on forever. I've never run into any cops that deep into the wilderness. I was never there to do anything wrong or unethical. I was simply attracted to the secluded nature of a night walk down the trail, because it would give me ideas for writing. Redbridge had never let me down, and this story is evidence of that fact. One night I was chatting with Connor through text messages. We decided to head down there the next evening to go on a blunt walk. It was great. The trail was vacant, seeing as no one wanted to stumble around in the dark at 9 on a Sunday night. We talked about life, who we once were and who we had become. We deliberated our lives back in high school, and whether or not we had actually made something of ourselves. We wondered if anything from our little subgroup of friends had actually made it out of Meriden. "You're a great writer," he told me. Never change your stories for anyone. That was before, when the trees were still green and the night still engulfed in the youthful glow of the summer sun. In that moment, though in our 20s and unsure of our direction in life, we found peace in the path. We found destiny in the dark and dense forests that surrounded us. Those were the real glory days, we decided. Our lives were just starting, and the origin of our lives held no power over us. This became the norm for us. Every Sunday night at around 7, we would get together, drive down to Redbridge, and enjoy a private smoke party on the road to nowhere. It was August. The trees were slowly dying around us in a mass funeral for summertime and the rebirth of the autumn season. It was humid. I wore a tank top and jeans while Connor wore his brightly colored tie-dye shirt. I'd like to point out that Connor never once put his hands on me, regardless of the opportunities he may have seen before him. We were isolated, and you can truly judge the character of a man when he's alone with a woman who has nowhere to run. I never in my life felt threatened by Connor. I don't think any woman ever has or ever will. Connor is a good guy, and I maintain that fact as I bear my truth for the world to see. We were not perfect, but our friendship was. Maybe it still is. I don't know. Life creeps up on you sometimes, like a man in a van with a free candy sign. Perhaps we're both busy, or perhaps this ruined everything. As we started our blunt walk, tiny drizzles of the late summer rain crashed to the pavement. Connor, being the nice guy he is, went to my car and got a hoodie for me. My phone was dying, but I didn't care. I felt safe out there in the wilderness with Connor. We got a mile into the trail before the world plunged into darkness. Connor ended up using his phone's flashlight most of the night. When I say the trail was blanketed in shadow, I damn well mean that. Within 20 minutes of being on the trail, it was impossible to see the road ahead of us. But we didn't care. We had 2 working lighters and a blunt to share between us. Suddenly I stopped walking. I heard some rustling in the brush to our right. Connor insisted it was nothing, but still, he shined his light in the direction of the sound to bring me a sense of security. We both followed the beam of light with our eyes, slowly and carefully. Anxiety flooding our veins and chilling us to the bone. Nothing. It's nothing, Connor assured me. It's nothing, I agreed, putting my paranoia aside. We walked another half-mile in. Connor's phone was dying, and we figured we should head back to the car. The night consumed us in our entirety. It would be impossible to see the path if that light died. Every now and then I would fall out of the ray of light and lose my footing, ending up in the mud several times. Connor never let me fall. He always guided me back to the path. About a quarter-mile from the car, I held Connor's cell phone for light, because I was the clumsy one and was trying desperately not to sink into the mud outside the safety of the path. Then we both heard it, a vocal vibration emanating from the shrubbery around us. We figured the sound was coming from our left, or what had been our right on the way in. I cannot adequately describe the stark sense of terror I felt in that moment. The sound was something I had only heard once before. A relative was dying in the hospital, and moments before his heart flatlined, we heard the rattle of death coming from within his chest. If you don't know what the death rattle sounds like, look it up and listen to it. It's the worst sound you will ever hear in your life. It will plague your days with dread and taint your nights with terror. That's the closest thing I can compare this sound to. Connor put his hand on my arm and followed my gaze. I gasped as the light caught the eyes of a small creature hiding in the night, its bulbous head tilted to one side more than the other. It was short, crouched, and completely naked. It honestly looked like a deformed child. I thought for a moment before it opened its mouth, letting out the ever-frightening death rattle from the bowels of hell itself. One thing I know for certain is that its long, repugnant tongue was completely blackened from God knows what. "Run!" Connor screamed, jerking my arm and pushing me in front of him. Connor's a pretty fit guy. I live a pretty stationary lifestyle, glued to my laptop for my work. He still never ran ahead of me. He kept me in front of him as we ran to the car. The creature did not actually come onto the path immediately. It wrestled through the bushes with incredible speed, following alongside us as though it were locked in a track race. My breathing grew ragged and my eyes were blinded by what had become a steady and heavy downpour of rain. We made it to the car in about 2 minutes and got in. I didn't stop to turn around. Connor paused and stared through the bushes before getting into the car. I locked the doors and sped out of the bootleg parking lot towards the main road. That was it. We were silent for the entire 6-minute car ride to Connor's house. I wrapped him in the tightest hug of my life, which he reciprocated. I haven't seen him since. I know he's alive and well. I see his posts on Facebook every so often, but I'm afraid to interact. I think he's avoiding me. I can't blame him. He kept me safe that night, and for that I owe him my life. If he never wants to see me again, so be it. I will give that final act of respect to the man who risked his life for me. I miss you, Connor. I really do, and I'm sorry. I don't know why or what for, but I'm sorry. You've dragged a little too far into my campfire tale. I hope you can forgive me someday for whatever wrong I've done. In the weeks following this incident, I did a bunch of research about what it was we could have seen. This was in the general area of Undercliff Sanatorium, the location where the Melonhead urban legends hold its roots. According to Damned Connecticut, Melonheads are thought to be inbred, backwoods people, a government experiment gone terribly wrong, or even cannibals who escaped Undercliff many years ago. What surprises me most is that while Melonheads have their origin in Connecticut, they have also been spotted in Michigan and Ohio. How and why, I do not know. What I do know is that I have a newfound respect for the wilderness and a renewed respect for the man who was once my best friend. So quoth this raven. A special thanks to the author, CJ. She completely came to my rescue when I found myself low on stories and couldn't get the replies I needed to continue. She is an awesome writer. I know I've read her stories before and they've done tremendously well on here. So big thanks to her. And of course, the biggest thanks to you all for coming to listen to me in my little library. It means so much. I still can't believe that there's over 1,700 of you out there. And a special thanks to my Patreon supporters, Ermin, Darren and Jennifer, Laura, and Charlotte Emerson. If you like this, please hit the little button to let me know. If you didn't, hit the little button to let me know. Leave a comment. I'm always glad to talk with you, my darlings. I'm open to suggestions and critiques. If you have not subscribed, please do so and ring the little bell so you know when to come up and see me. And I will talk to you next time, my darlings. Farewell.